This program brought to you by Brewski's Bar and Grill, located in Utica, Minnesota. Your one-stop shop for delicious burgers, fries, pizzas, and more.
Ready?
Let's go.
Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to the first show of 2020. And we're ready to go.
We're ready to go.
George is ready
John
to
Randall.
He's ready to go out and play right now for the Vikes after that big win last weekend. And is that where we should start?
We can start right there.
Yeah, we'll start with the Vikes. What the heck?
It's like Kirk Cousins said after the game. You like that? You like that? And you know, and he played a really, really good game. And you know, they went in the underdog. I mean, huge underdog. I haven't seen 17 points and all like the rest of that. They played real solid up to up to par defense, linebacking, and the secondary sometimes had some question marks, but Rhodes was kind of stung up, and he kept on coming back in all the time.
He probably played his game of the year, I think.
I think he probably did.
And I read an article or saw a statement, I don't know where it was, and it basically said that Kyle Shanahan, if Xavier Rhodes is in the game, he is going after him.
Yes.
And I'm like, after the way Xavier played last week, bring it on.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised that Michael Thomas caught 7 balls. I would not have guessed watching that game that he had caught 7 balls
And
for
he
70
struggled.
yards. He did. He was
struggled.
frustrated.
And there probably is no better receiver in the whole wide league.
Right now, he's probably the best receiver. So
on the other hand, those poor old Saints, I had to take a look at Tyson Hill.
Yeah.
I mean, here's a guy, 6'3", 240 pounds. I don't know, was he drafted, but he was a quarterback. He caught the ball. He threw the ball. He ran the ball. And he covered kickoffs.
Yeah.
You know, of course, they say he has 4.4 speed, and the way he's pieced together, that could overcome a lot of.
The Vikings had a tough time trying to contain him when he came out on the field. I don't think they were really sure what he was going to do. That might be one of the sore spots for Vikings fans, other than maybe the offensive play calling being a little too conservative in the fourth quarter for lots of people's likings. But having said that, I'm after the game, I'm concerned about Delvin Cook. Let me explain why. Because I've talked to a lot of people about this week, and they kind of gave me the look like, you really think so? I think he got dinged up in that game.
He might have.
The reason why, go back to the plays when he would run up the middle. There was about 3 plays in the fourth quarter and overtime where he would run into the pile. And you know, usually when a running back runs into the pile, there's like a little give, or there's a fall forward or a spin. He was actually being driven backwards. There was no juke move. It was just like, so some people said, well, could that be that he was tired? That's very possible after a couple weeks off, maybe everything else. But there was the play down after Thielen made his big catch in overtime, and we're on the 2-yard line, and he ran the ball the first time, and it was like he hit a wall on first down. So we got second and goal at the 1-yard line, and they ran the big wide sweep to the left-hand side. And a lot of people have said to me that's the dumbest play call down on the goal line that you can run. And I'm not so sure that they're wrong. But when Delvin got to the point where he had to make a decision to go north and south, he didn't.
He did not.
And that leads me to believe that whichever side is hurt, he did not want to turn north and south and have to try to stick it in there. He was going to. And I'll go back, September, October, I said it right here, sitting right in this chair, looking into that camera right there. Go ahead and run out of bounds, big fella. I'm okay with that. But when you're on the 2-yard line, you got to try to turn that son of a gun north and south when you're trying to get to the next level. So I hope that it's tiredness, but he looked great through 3 quarters. I mean, he looked pretty special. So having said that, I'm worried about Xavier Rhodes. Xavier Rhodes played a great game. When he took that hit, and he probably should have gotten called for a hitting in the head, probably should have been a 15-yard penalty. Having said that, I thought when he crumbled up there, I thought he broke his collarbone because that's how he got hit.
He was in pain.
He was in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
So that concerns me. And of course, today it came out that Thielen hurt his ankle yesterday. It's Thursday today. hurt his ankle in practice, didn't practice yesterday. Then they said he had a cut on his ankle. I don't know how you get a cut on your ankle that way. I suppose maybe with spikes or whatever. I'm not sure, but now they've listed him as questionable for Saturday afternoon's game on a Thursday afternoon. And you're just kind of going, okay, so Alexander's out, and you start going through this. So can they do it again, I guess? There's lots of things against them, but you got to give Mike Zimmer credit. Moving his 2 rush defensive ends in as stand-up tackles and rushing the quarterback on third down. Zimmer, I don't think he's gotten the credit this week that he should for coming up with that, because he still has a secondary that is banged up. He had to do something to protect them, and he did it with his defensive line. Obviously, San Francisco is going to be ready for that, but they've got to get ready for everything else too. So give Zimmer some credit on that. It was very ingenious. But my final point on the Vikings game is the offensive line, and this was in the Star Tribune I think on Tuesday, and I think it was Chip Scoggins or Scogins, however you say it, wrote that article. How clean was Kirk Cousins in that game? He had time to throw the ball. They did things. They were able to run the ball. He had time to throw. Thielen got open. Diggs was stuff and mad and whatever else like he normally is when he's not touching the ball. And he wasn't mad. It came out afterwards, and maybe he's covering his tracks, but he was not mad at Kirk Cousins or anybody else. He was mad because New Orleans was double teaming him. He couldn't get open.
That's exactly right.
So give New Orleans credit for making him frustrated. They found a way to get the ball into his hands on a couple of handoffs, some short passes. And I think, San Francisco is a different animal, is a different team. But they've got the same caliber players. Hey, New Orleans was 13-3.
Yes, very good team.
They're very good team.
They were all pieced together. I mean, that was a solid defense, and you have one of the finest. You have a Hall of Fame quarterback, and you have a real good backfield. I mean, it's a whole package.
An All-Pro offensive tackle, All-Pro defensive end, and everything seemed to be pretty contained. So give the guys a lot of credit. Give Zimmer some credit, and I think, but also give Zimmer some discredit on how conservative the Vikings got in the fourth quarter with the play calling. And I understand. You got to run the ball so you can run 40 seconds off the clock. I get that. But on 1st and 10, maybe once they could have thrown the ball on first down to keep New Orleans honest, because they were just stacking it in there. And so it was a little frustrating. And with a 10-point lead at the start of the fourth quarter, that was concerning to give up the lead, and it could have been worse. So
it certainly could have been worse. And the way New Orleans went down and scored right off the bat, and you figure, oh, here it goes again.
Yeah, after the Vikings fumble, after Thielen fumbled with the ball in the wrong hand, you licker.
Yeah, you always pick that one up. You always kind of pick that one up.
I was trained very, very well, and it had a lot. I'll say it this way: the start of that Vikings game had a lot of similarities to the start of the Gopher game on New Year's Day, where they turned it over on the third play, and then, by gosh, the defense holds them to the opponent to a field goal. And I'm just like, oh gosh, this is scary, but it's going to end up pretty good. They'll end up winning in the end, and
that's exactly what they did.
And that's exactly what they did. So, but Wild Card Weekend had 4 close games.
I flipped around and I settled in with Tennessee and New England. What a football game!
Yeah.
And I forgot about Derrick Henry. Now, if you're playing against Derrick Henry, you won't forget about him. He's 6'3", 250 pounds, runs like a gazelle. And at the end, New England was trying to hit him with arm tackles. And he's lucky he didn't break a couple of those arms and hit those guys with them. Towards the end, he would run by and they'd try to catch him from back and grab him by the head. That was the only way that they could avoid making contact with this guy. Now, like Tannehill, they said, that he only completed 8 passes. Why would he have to? I mean, he kept on handing them off to Henry, and the offensive line was working real well. Tennessee's defense was really working well, and throughout the game they got stronger.
Yeah, it was. I can't say it was a convincing win, but considering that it was a 6-3 again, just like the Vikes and New Orleans, you don't beat New England in New England in the playoffs. That doesn't happen very often. So I know it made a lot of people happy to see New England out of it. And Tom Brady has already said, "I'm coming back. I've got something to prove." The question is it going to be in New England or is it going to be someplace else? Has he had enough of? Have him and Bill? Have they finally reached the point where Tom's a free agent? I'd like to go see what the grass is on the other side of the fence. I've enjoyed my time here, but let me go see what it's like in. I've heard Indianapolis or some other place where who knows what can happen. It's
Indianapolis is in bad need of a quarterback, and so that would be a likely choice. But he doesn't seem to be done yet. And besides, that's not a Tom Brady team. That's an 11-man squad, and you have to have all 11. And the only time that New England really dominated, they had 11 good men.
Yeah.
And that's what they were able to put out, and these guys were banged up and a little different.
So 4 wild card games.
Yes.
Which one of them, of the 4, and they were all good, don't get me wrong, which one of them was the dud of the 4 games? If you had to think back, which one was the dud?
Geez, I even have it written down in my sheets here.
Well, you could have had Houston and Buffalo that went to overtime, and then you just talked about
the Seahawks and the Eagles, but
that was the bum game.
That was the bum game, and that wasn't bad.
And that wasn't bad. And here's the thing about that. This was on ESPN, I think, Monday or Tuesday. It was the most watched television program since the Super Bowl last year.
You're kidding.
So how can a game that was like watching paint dry for a while, because that's what it was in the first half, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't watch this anymore. I watched parts of the second half. But having said it, the highest rating, of course, I mean, you got Philly and the whole thing around the East Coast. You got Seattle, so you had the whole West Coast. But it's Sunday afternoon. People were watching football. There was no Sunday night football on, so that game goes in a little bit late. They had 35.8 million people were watching that football game in the second half. And I'm just like, that's stunning to think that was more than the Vikings in New Orleans, who went to overtime. And the New England game on Saturday night, you would have thought would have just been, the ratings would have just been astronomical with what was going on. But I guess late Sunday afternoon, people are watching TV. They're getting set to go back to work. So I thought it was very interesting. So we'll see what happens.
Well, no, and I'll tell you what, Carson Wentz went down. And find this 40-year-old guy that was working for ESPN, and he was a high school coach. Of course, he had 17 years in the league.
Yeah, Josh McCown.
Josh McCown. And he came in, and here's this 40-year-old man on keepers, legitimately
keeping the ball.
And as you think, you haven't learned a thing in all those years, old man, but he really played a heck of a ball game. It's amazing the way some of these guys come in and do it.
Did you think the hit was dirty on Wentz?
I don't.
I didn't think so either, but there's been lots of complaints on Twitter.
It was a big guy putting a hit, but and in fact he might have even pulled it off a little bit.
Okay. I just thought it was interesting. So.
No, and Kyle Rudolph did not push off for that touchdown either.
Equal amount of contact there, and that's why the NFL didn't do anything about it. Yeah. I mean, if they're going to call a penalty one way on that, the other team's going to be freaking out. You go back last year when the Rams in New Orleans and the foul there and the no penalty call there, that was one-sided. This was, and I'll say this, and I'm a Vikings fan, so okay, I'm guilty of whatever. But I thought the New Orleans guy gave him a little grab right before.
There was a lot of banging in there.
And then he gave to kind of like get rid of his hands and pushed off.
Well, you see, New Orleans Saints these days think that the whole world's against them, especially
and they are.
Those guys in stripes.
They are, and they should be after what they did to Brett Favre.
I just want to go through the way these playoff games are going to go.
There it is. Oh my! The LSU fans are in the house.
So we'll get to that in a second.
We'll get to that.
But Saturday the Vikings are on at
3:30,
and that's NBC. And that night game.
So who are you taking? Are you taking the Vikes to
I'm taking the Vikes. If they can put a team out there, I'm going with the Vikes.
Yeah, if Thielen plays, I stay with the Vikes. If they don't have Thielen, then I say no.
I just saw that the Seahawks almost beat them the week before, and the 49ers had to pull one out to get that. So no, 49ers by 7.
Okay.
I don't see that at all.
All right.
And then the Titans and the Ravens, I'm going to tell you, starting at 11 o'clock on Saturday morning, NDSU is going to be playing. And
it's a big day Saturday.
There's 3 games going on, and which means that I'll probably have a sore butt by the end of the night. But
and it'll be a good sore butt, though.
That's it. And then on Sunday, the Texans.
Who are you taking? Can
Ravens.
Tennessee upset the Ravens?
I looked over all the available data, and I saw no way that the Titans could beat the Ravens.
Ravens, absolutely.
Yeah, they just.
All right, let's go to Sunday.
Sunday, the Texans and the Chiefs. Now, keep in mind the Texans beat the Chiefs earlier this year, and Watson's really a fine quarterback. I think he is just a cut below what Lamar Jackson is.
Yep.
But this kid can play. The problem is he takes a lot of heavy hits.
He does.
And if he can stay, but he gets up.
For how long? That's what they said about Michael Vick too.
But Patrick Mahomes and that Kansas City Chief, they're one of 2 of the best teams in the league.
They had their mojo. They put a chink in their armor by losing 3 games, I think, at home this year.
Yeah.
And their invincibility that they felt like that they had last year, I think is gone a little bit. This is going to be very close. Kansas City wins it, but it's close. That's my prediction.
No, I think they will too. But it should be a really good game. And then the Seahawks and the Packs. Now, I'm not sure about this one.
You're not sure because?
Well, because there were times that Seattle looked really good last week. And you sit down there and you watch them, and they got this that big split end, if he called a split end or something. Weightlifter, the wide receiver for Seattle. I
can't think of his name.
I got it in my notes, but Wilson really likes him.
Okay.
And
here's my conundrum. I'll tell you. I despise Pete Carroll. He's a cheater. He is, plain and simple. Always has been, always will be. And you got the Green Bay Packers. So here's what I'm going to do to remedy that situation on Sunday afternoon. I'm going to watch a Wild game live at XL Energy Center, and I'm not even going to worry about that football game. How's that?
Well,
because is there any way that they could tie and then whoever wins the Vikings?
There's no way Seahawks are going to go into Lambeau Field in wintertime.
So the Pack are in.
Oh, the Pack is in.
So we're going to Lambeau in 2 weeks.
That would be.
That's what you're saying. That's what I hear you saying, George.
Well, I think that's true. I think that's true. I think that was always a possibility.
Absolutely.
And even if they would have met in different brackets in the playoff game, which was always a possibility, except
Absolutely.
Green Bay started playing some pretty good football.
Okay.
I'm just saying, there's 4 really solid games.
Well, and here's the thing, anybody who loses at this time, if you get blown out, it's a different deal. But, if you're in a ball game and you lose by, heck, even 10 points in the playoffs, there's a reason why it's down to 8 teams. These are 8 of the best teams in football.
Very fine.
And so you're dealing with lots of different things, and things can happen. Teams win, teams lose. I bet a lot of the New Orleans Saints fans think that they should still be playing because they got one of the best teams, but it happens that you get beat. So the point I'm trying to make here is, if the Vikings lose on Saturday, so help me God, for any person out there who tells me that Mike Zimmer needs to be fired, I'm going to come over there and I'm going to punch you in your skull.
No, you can't.
I'm going to come over there, Randy, and I'm going to punch you in your skull. Oh my gosh. Why?
This is
why? What do they want to get rid of Zimmer for? He just made the game.
So here we have Minnesota's ranked number 5, Green Bay's ranked number 4, and San Francisco's ranked number 3. Guess who's ranked number 2 and number 1?
Must be Kansas City and Baltimore.
Hey, you seem to pick that one right up. And so yeah, I figure that Minnesota being number 5 in with that bunch is just fine.
They played the underdog role very well last week.
Yeah.
They got to be playing the underdog role, the Vikings, again this week. But I thought Zimmer hit it right on the head. If you saw the post-game interview after the Thielen got done doing, do you like that and all that other stuff, that business, Zimmer got back in there, pulled them back in, and then said, guys, remember when we did this 2 years ago? We came up with a big win against New Orleans. We laid an egg the next weekend.
Exactly.
We need to come to ready to, okay, this is great. Awesome win, whatever else. Enjoy it for now. But boy, when we come back to work on Tuesday, we better be ready to go. And he hit it right on the head. And you can't learn those lessons until you sometimes go through them. As a head coach, as a quarterback, everybody says, well, geez, he should know. These high school kids play quarterback. Well, they should know that they got to throw the ball away when they really, till you've been there and done it. That's how we learn our best lessons, is when we make mistakes. And so the Vikings, I think, are going to learn from this. And I would feel a whole lot better if the Vikings had one more day rest.
Yeah.
And they were playing on Sunday.
Yeah.
But having said that, I still think they find a way. I really do. If Thielen plays.
I got a key factor that you might want to watch. 49ers defensive tackle DeForest Buckner.
Okay.
Very fine, and he's going to play against left guard Pat Elflein. And
He's had a tough year.
He's had a tough year. And
Think he's going to get some help?
well, if he gets some help, he's going to be all right. But Buckner does have the edge on this. And last week, Cousins, he was pretty comfortable back in that pocket. The blanket was pretty good.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be a matchup that maybe is a mismatch, maybe it isn't. But that's going to be key.
He's going to get help. There's no doubt about that. They're going to find a way to make sure that he's taken care of. That's all the strategy and the gamesmanship, and that's the chess match. I think that was the thing last week. The Vikings won because of the chess match. They came up with a game plan that New Orleans couldn't solve during the game. That's what it's all about every week.
The edge with Green Bay is Zadarius Smith. And if he can rush, and Seattle's got a pretty good offensive line, but you know he led the NFL with 93 pressures. He's had tied the league with 37 quarterback hits and ranks with 13 and a half sacks.
And he's got a cool name.
Isn't that just really good? Zadarius. God, I like that name.
Yeah.
It is.
It's hard to forget.
It is.
It's hard to forget.
And then the other thing is, I noticed all the people that were coming out for the draft. I got a long list. I'd love to show you. But now they have a new position. They used to be defensive end. Now they call him the edge man.
They're an edge rusher.
The edge rusher, and so primarily that's all he worries about is teeing off.
It's a pretty good deal, isn't it?
Well, it is.
Make millions of dollars to just turn loose and run for 15 yards and see if you can beat the living snot out of.
6'5" and 280 pounds and can run that fast like Chase Young, you can get away with it.
Get away with that.
I'm going through a few of my notes here before we get on a little bit, and to mention that Antoine Winfield III came out for the draft. Good news for the pros, not so good news for the Gophers, but nobody's surprised.
Nobody's surprised that he's going. I think it's the right time. I don't want to sound whatever. He has found himself in a bit of trouble over the past couple of years. I know we all grow that. I know we, and I say we, George, we found ourselves in some trouble when we were younger.
Oh yeah, they're mostly still here.
Yeah. So, but we learned to outgrow that stuff and to move on from it. So, good for him. Good luck to him. I think he'll make a fine pro for some team.
I can't wait to watch it because he really is. He is as good a defensive back as the Gophers. And you know, for 20 years we had a lack of secondary people, and he just kind of filled that hole. And the first time you saw him, you know he was something special.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Bison before we talk about Clemson and LSU.
We can do that.
So the Bison, I was all set on Saturday to watch the Bison because I was sure that game was last Saturday, and I was very disappointed to find out that it was this coming Saturday. But I still think still think the Bison get the win? Is that how you're feeling it?
There's not too much doubt about it. I mean, they not only have, and I got a couple of notices here about.
Well, while you're digging, I'm gonna bring this up then. While you're digging to kind of sidelight this thing, what do you think about the Carolina Panthers and them picking the Baylor head coach out for 7 years for $60 million, $8.5 million per year average,
and he lost his last game.
And he lost his last game. You know, it's been tradition that college coaches coming into the pros don't do very well the first time they come out. Pete Carroll being one of them, and then went back to the colleges and came back out. Okay, Nick Saban went to the Dolphins, didn't work, went to Alabama. But if he'd have come out a second time, would he have learned his lessons? And this is what I'm talking about, what I talked about a few minutes ago. You have to learn from your mistakes. I think this is a mistake by Carolina. I do. Giving him 7 years at $60 million. 5 years would have been fine. I'm sure he's got a heck of a buyout clause. But I see this could be a 2-year thing with his good friend, the quarterback. Jeez, come on, Tim. Who's got the bad shoulder?
Tau?
No, the quarterback for Carolina. I can't think of his. Anyway, he's running himself into a bad place, and he's going to end up finding himself back in the college ranks someday, someplace else. And that's the way I look at it. But anyway, let's go back to the Bison.
Okay, let's go to this Bison. And I have, like they say, by the numbers. Number 0, the redshirt freshman, Trey Lance, threw 0 interceptions out of 277 attempts.
Not too shabby.
That's for redshirt freshman? No, it's not. The FCS record for the most passes in a season without an interception is Eric Goebel with 169 in 1996. So
so the pressure's on.
He got almost 100 more, over 100 more, and on a record that has stood for 30 years. So, the number of previous meetings between championship game opponents, NDSU won 26-14 at home in the second round in 2011. James Madison won 27-17 in the Fargo Dome in 2016. Yeah. Oh, that must have been
that's the chink in the armor there. Yeah. That's the dent, the flaw in this run that the Bison have had.
And NDSU won 17-13 in Frisco, in Texas. By the way, this is in Frisco, Texas.
Frisco, Texas.
And they go there a lot. Now, I take a look here.
I'm going to put that so the microphone's not covered. That's okay.
Number 13. The number of career interceptions by NDSU free safety Jim Hendricks and Madison quarterback Rashad Robinson tied for the 4th in the most active players. So they have a very active secondary, and there's a reason for that because there's a defensive end that plays for NDSU. His name is Derek Tuska. And he injures. He really is damaged people. He is out there. He's got to rush. He's got to rush as good as anybody in any Division I team that I have seen.
Okay.
He comes at you hard and strong, and so he leads that defense. But NDSU is qualified for all 10 playoffs during the 2010s, and Frisco is hosting the title game for the 10th straight year. So they've been down there. An awful lot.
Yeah.
Like James Madison, they have Percy Agri-Obese had 19 touchdowns. They kick well. They beat everybody else up. North Dakota State has won 32 straight games after open weeks in the regular season and postseason, including the first 7 trips to Frisco.
It's a pretty tough number.
Pretty tough number. So I really do.
Nothing about Noah Gindorf in there from Crosby Ironton. No, I like Noah. He's a big kid that goes out there and he's a tight end. He does the dirty work. He catches the ball and he blocks. So
catches the ball and blocks.
Yeah.
That's 2 out of the 3 things you got to do.
That's what you got to do.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm picking NDSU on this one again. And there's one other thing that I read an article about NDSU graduates and they started an association of NDSU Bison type things, and it started as a social organization, and all of a sudden they found out a lot of these guys got a lot of money, and they started raising a ton of money for a whole bunch of charities. And it's just like you just think football players, they just go and fade away. Well, that's not necessarily so. But it's the North Dakota State Bison Association, and these guys go out and do an awful lot of good things. So it was a good article about. They will all be in Fresno, Texas for this game.
Yes.
It's going to be a dandy.
Shall we move on to Clemson and LSU? That got the attention over there. Woo!
Okay, it's like last.
You got their colors on! And their Bronco cars! You're for LSU! Yeah, LSU!
I call it the fight of the Tigers.
The fight of the Tigers. I like it. Yes.
And so I watched LSU religiously all year long, Clemson several times, and then I watched Clemson take apart Ohio State. I saw LSU take apart Oklahoma too, which makes you wonder about how they find these teams. But Clemson's really remarkable football team. They're the defending national champions. They have this is a coach's dream. This is a football fan's dream, this game. Both teams, 13-0, 1-2 in the nation, going for the national championships. A couple of really wound-up coaches, Dabo Swinney. Dabo, I love that.
Yeah.
And Big N Orgeron, a Cajun coach from who knows where, but these are some serious characters. They run a very lively football team. Loads and loads of talent on both sides of the ball. I'm just, because I picked Minnesota and I picked the Vikings, I am going to pick this. I'm going with Clemson.
Wow. Okay. Because what?
They have this guy named Trevor Lawrence,
who's never lost.
Who's never lost. He can run. Oh, he can really run. He's huge. He's 6'5" or plus, about 250 pounds. He throws the ball really well. I understand he's going against Joe Burrow, the Heisman Trophy, but they've got a very fine team. They got Etney as a running back, he's a junior this year, and he's been all conference forever. And so they have a great defensive line. They got a guy in the They got a guy on the defensive line, 6'4", 315 pounds, and he's a defensive end. Now something tells me they're going to be switching him to tackle somewhere along the line. But if they can't move him, then they got pretty much one side of the line covered, and Clemson has that capability.
It comes down to turnovers in this game. Who handles the pressure of the big lights in the first quarter? Because you can dig yourself a hole that sometimes you have a hard time getting out of. Ask Alabama against LSU. LSU was up huge on Alabama, and Alabama probably all played them in the second half, and things had to happen. So I'm going to go the opposite side of the coin from you. I'm taking LSU in this game. I saw a lot of. I saw too much against Oklahoma. Oklahoma was the fourth horse in a three-horse race. Let me just say. They probably didn't belong in the equation. I think any one of those three teams would have handled Oklahoma. I do.
Well, what are you going to say? He scored 7 touchdowns in the first half.
Yeah.
This is close to a perfect game as I've seen a quarterback play. I'm not sure he can replicate that.
No, I don't think he can, and I don't think he has to either. I think the running back, the double name, and I can't think of it right now. You're going to dig while I put myself into a hole here. He's going to be healthier this time, and that poses a problem for.
That's Torrey Carter.
And it poses a problem for Clemson. This is going to be a heck of a ball game. I think it ends up being a one-score game. and it's going to come down to who had 3 turnovers versus 2 turnovers. Flip them around, but I'll take the opposite side. We don't disagree very often, but I'll take LSU in this game, and I'll go about 20. I'll go 26-24.
Yeah.
If I got to make a score prediction, I'll go 26-24 LSU. That close.
And that could be because Clemson, if they do have some problems, is probably with place kicking, and neither team was really good at it, but neither teams had to be.
that definitely helps.
25-28 LSU.
Okay, there. See, close. Right, 28-25. So see, we're right about the same place. So yeah, it's gonna be a tight ball game, and so that's on Monday the 13th.
Monday the 13th.
They keep extending this thing out, keep dragging it out further and further.
That's driving a lot of people crazy.
So
shouldn't have gone for 2 weeks.
Okay, we got to talk about the Gophers.
We can.
We got to talk about the Gopher game. I'll say it this way, folks. The Gophers fumbled on the 3rd play from scrimmage, or through the interception.
Yeah,
Through the interception, the Vikings fumbled. They gave up the kick return. Okay. And they were being told that they had no business being on the field. They had every reason to go to the sideline, feel sorry for themselves that they were outclassed by an SEC team, and go on and lose by 3 touchdowns, like somebody, me, predicted that they might very well could have, and lose by double-digit points, which is what I predicted. And they did themselves proud. Like I said, they had every reason to quit in that game, and they didn't. They pulled out the stops. They got gutsy, threw it to a tight end who normally didn't catch the football.
Are you kidding? He only caught 1 before that game started, and he had 2 key 4th down catches. 4 on the season. It's
and the third thing was their offensive coordinator being gone, and the kid came in and called a heck of a ball game and got himself a half of an offensive coordinatorship out of it. And
Tyler Johnson was incredible.
Wow.
And the running backs, Ibrahim, all these running backs, they were in there really sticking it to it.
And no Brooks.
And no Brooks.
And no Brooks for the whole game because he was injured.
Yeah.
So Ibrahim was unbelievable.
Yeah. No. And you want.
And no Big Daniel. So they had all this against them, and the big SEC defensive line, all the 300-pounders, and how are you going to move them? They did it.
They did it.
I don't know if it's with mirrors or smoke or what, but they did it.
No, and I'll tell you, you have to give Tanner Morgan.
Yeah?
I mean, what a year this kid has had, and he's coming back. And he's going to start, they're going to have a pretty good offense coming back, even replacing Taylor or Johnson.
Yeah, they're going to have to find somebody, and then somebody will rise up. I don't know if they'll be that good right away, but they'll come around.
I'll tell you.
The biggest thing is they got to find a couple more offensive linemen so that they can stay a little bit healthier in that position. But obviously those are tough to find. But let's get those boys healthy.
I'll tell you, PJ Fleck walking into somebody's living room and talking them to go to the University of Minnesota, pack your bags because chances are he's going to do it. And it's taken a while for me to buy this row the boat thing, but the kids buy it, he buys it. That's the only thing that's important.
I think we've talked about this here. His enthusiasm, his decorum, his whatever mannerisms doesn't sit well with everybody.
No,
not every kid wants to go do that. But I got to believe that there's 115 kids out there in the United States that are between 18 and 23 years old that will buy into his way of doing it.
Don't restrict it to the United States, man. They're coming from all over the world these days.
In Canada, and Germany, and everywhere else. So yeah, it was a heck of a show. Fleck and the boys deserve all the accolades that they've gotten, all the attaboys and nice jobs and whatever else. They did it. They did it in a. I would say you go to the south but the Gopher fans traveled. It was kind of like a home game.
All over the place down there.
That's you looked at the stadium wasn't completely full, but when you've got 40,000 people there, let's say 30,000 of them are Gopher fans, all of a sudden that seems like a home game.
I favored Minnesota for one reason. If Auburn could have covered the wide receivers that would have taken away one half of the game.
Yeah.
They could not.
They couldn't, no.
And so that loosened the whole thing up for a running game. However, and I mean, Big Seth, you know, he was banging them in there, and it's just like, you know, look at this guy. What's he going to do? Well, he's going to show you in a second. Everybody made a contribution. Defense played very, very well,
Yep.
And it was the last time you're ever going to see Antoine Winfield in a Gopher uniform, but he was fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely good stuff. Anything else on the Gophers?
I'll tell you right now, let's go just quickly with the football team. Tonight, Minnesota plays Michigan State in East Lansing. Yeah, you're a good Catholic boy.
They're going to need all the help they can get going into Israel.
When was the last time Michigan State even lost in that gym?
Well, they don't lose there very often.
They don't.
They had a tough start to the season,
Yeah.
but I don't know if any of those games are in East Lansing.
I don't either.
It's a different animal when you play them there, though.
And then tomorrow at 8 o'clock, guess what I'm going to be watching? Minnesota and Wisconsin wrestling.
And did you hear who the honorary coach is?
Brock Lesnar.
Big Brock Lesnar, yeah?
Yeah, he's going to return, and he's come to the room once in a while. And I also got a picture of Gable Steveson. He's growing, and you know
He's only 19.
he is growing, and I know he's got to be holding 280, and he looks really, really big. And I think Brock might go in the room and roll with him a little bit. And I don't know. I mean, he's got to go through wrestling partners like you're going out of style. You know, it's a tough situation for him. But this is the 20th anniversary of Brock winning his national championship. He was in the
Gophers
finals
winning,
twice,
and the Gophers winning.
The Gophers winning. Yeah, people were saying all the time, "Go for sports, go for sports." Yeah, check out the wrestling. They were good. I caught an interview by Brandon Ingham, and he's real happy with the team right now. They're coming on nice and strong. They got this Mitch McKee who's undefeated, and there's going to be 4 really super bouts on tomorrow night's lineup, and there's 7 rated wrestlers between the 2 teams. So this is going to be a good time.
I was very disappointed in myself. And, well, can I say I was a little disappointed in George as well, because George didn't help me out on this one. Did you realize what was on Monday night? Arizona State versus Ohio State in wrestling on FS1.
No,
at
I did
6
not
o'clock.
know that.
So I'm flipping through the channels. I don't know where I was Monday night. I come home, I sit down in the chair, I start flipping through. There's a basketball game on. There was a football game on. I start flipping through. Here's the final. It's 8:15. Here's the final score. Arizona State 17, Ohio State 16. Can you imagine? 17-16?
We have this imaginary line pretty much down the Mississippi, and wrestling goes east from there, and we forget there's some fine wrestlers out on the West Coast.
Yeah, so
and so it's...
it was on replay in the middle of the night, but I did not get up to envision. But it must have been a heck of a duel.
It must have been.
So, and this is on BTN tomorrow night at 8 o'clock.
Big Ten Network tomorrow at 8.
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
I think I may have to halt everything else so I can watch that stuff. That sounds like good stuff. How about Gopher? So can Gopher basketball win in East Lansing tonight?
No, but they're coming back on Sunday and playing Michigan at Williams Arena. And now that should be a dandy. Can they win? Yes, they can win. But, you know, they have to consistently hit their threes, which is tough to do.
I'd like to see what Oturo does at East Lansing, because I would suspect that Izzo's got a little issue, got a game plan to neutralize him. But if you try to neutralize the big guy in the post, that opens up the three-pointers. So it could be a little bit of a catch-22. Obviously, it's better for Michigan State if the Gophers aren't hitting their threes.
Yes.
They depend upon that a lot. We'll see what happens. I hope they show well for themselves.
That's all they got to do.
I don't think anybody's got expectations that they can win. That includes me. But go in there and you know they've been up and down. You know, they go and lose to Iowa. Well, everybody thinks they shouldn't lose to Iowa. Well, Iowa is a decent team, you know. Then they beat Ohio State. Then they lose to Purdue in double overtime on the road, which a lot of people...
Figure it out. North Dakota goes beats Nebraska, and Nebraska goes beats Iowa.
So, I mean, yeah, so any given night, it ought to be fun to watch, though.
Yeah.
What else you got?
The only thing I was going to bring up is watching these. This is really this weekend going to be the battle of the quarterbacks, and it's Tannehill versus Jackson. I think Jackson has the other thing here, but Tannehill's big, tough, strong guy, 8-year vet. He knows what's going on now, and also Ingram's questionable.
Okay.
And so that takes away a little bit of that. Tyson Watson and Patrick Mahomes. I don't know what football team is better than the other football team. I just know you're looking at two very fine quarterbacks.
Yeah.
This is a generational thing. 40-year-old quarterbacks didn't do well last weekend. And now there's. I wonder why. But Breeze, Brady, and McCowan, they all lost. And so it's a tough situation to do when these 24, 25-year-olds can run all over the place, and run they can. And
So you're saying Aaron Rodgers doesn't stand a chance this weekend?
no, I'm saying this is the one that comes up is between Rodgers and Russell. This is a pretty good matchup.
It's good stuff.
And Rodgers can be magic, and so can Russell Wilson. So they have, and the cousins of Garoppolo.
I'm still not a Garoppolo believer. I still am not a believer.
Garoppolo. Where did he go to school? Eastern Illinois. How would I have ever heard of him? But they got a good team, and they pulled a horseshoe against Seattle a couple of weeks ago, and so you got to know that they're capable. They got this big tight end that's the best in the league, George Kittle, and whatever they do with him, he looks like he likes to punish people too.
Somebody said this in the last few days. Don't be surprised if it's number 6 at number 5 for the NFC Championship game. Don't be surprised if the Vikings have to go back to Seattle again, where they have played like horse dung.
Yeah.
And they already are on the schedule again for next year to play Seattle. And
somebody brought that up.
Yeah. So anyway, it's going to be fun stuff this weekend. There's no doubt about that. Quick Broncos update.
Go ahead, give it to me.
It's Thursday when we're taping this. The Bronco girls hockey team added a game in for tonight against Hibbing Chisholm, a team that they had lost to pretty one-sided a couple weeks ago. But they play Prairie Center on Saturday. And Prairie Center and the Broncos played the very first game of the year, and the Broncos lost 2-1 down there. I predict they're going to be at Bronco Arena on Saturday afternoon. I give the Broncos their first win. The girls hockey team has yet to win this season. Very young team. And I'll say this, I had a chance to see Coach Michelle McDonald in the hallway Wednesday, because they played Tuesday night. And I don't know if you heard about the Broncos. They lost 10-0 to Bemidji, but they scored like 0.3 seconds after the final horn. And when I talked to Coach McDonald, she had almost got tears in her eyes when she started talking about it. She says, these girls have worked so hard. And I talked to the assistant coach this morning, and he said, these girls work so hard. If we told them to go run through the wall, and that was going to make them better, that's what they would do. They said, Michelle basically said, they deserve better than what they're getting. These kids go out and lay it on the line every night. The wins aren't there, and that's not what we're measuring. But she says they deserve a win, and they're going to get one on Saturday. I really believe that.
Michelle, since she was a little girl, she is a class act.
She is.
And you're pulling for those girls all the time. Got to get one.
Bronco hockey team, a disappointing 3-3 tie at Virginia. Virginia, I think, coming into the game was 3-10, and the Broncos came in 8-4 on the road. 3-3 overtime tie, a disappointment. A lot of kids disappointed in that loss. That's I don't want to put undue pressure on early in the season, but people are already thinking that the Broncos could get a home game in the playoffs, meaning top 4 seed in Section 7A. That tie could be one of those things that comes back to bite them in the rear. I'm not saying it's going to cost them, because there's lots of hockey left, but that was a disappointing, not one on the road. Bronco boys basketball team won at Lake of the Woods on Monday very convincingly. They got an overtime win over Mesabi East at home on Friday. They sit at 6-2 on the season, and sitting pretty well. They got a kind of a a lull in their schedule. They're off until next Tuesday when they go to Eveleth, a game that they had a heck of a ball game. I think they only won by 3 points up here in a very good game. And then they get Mesabi East again down in Mesabi. So they got 2 games on the road next week. We'll see how they fare off of that. The girls basketball team lost to MIB on Monday. Everybody seems to lose to MIB recently. The Broncos are 4-5, and so sitting right there about the 500 mark. The Bronco Wrestlers, they are in action as we speak. I talked to Noah yesterday. He did not wrestle last weekend down at Hibbing at the Invitational, but he said he was good, ready to go, that he would be wrestling tonight. So they got a quadrangular tonight, I believe, in
Grand Rapids?
It could be Grand Rapids. And then the Bronco boys swimming and diving team, they're down on the range on Saturday for the Virginia Invitational. And I don't know if we talked about this in the last show, but they swam against Mesabi East on the road before the holiday break, and they lost 85-83. And I talked to Coach Steve after the meet. I saw him, and I said, geez, that was really close. He said, yeah, they throw him in the pool when the Broncos win a duel. And he said, I thought I was going in the pool. And he said, you know what the worst part is? He said, we had an event where we didn't swim somebody, and Mesabi East only swam 2. He said we'd have gotten 3 points. He said we would have won 86-85. But how do you know that before the meet starts? So you start playing things around and everything else. So the Bronco boys swimming and diving team is improving, getting better. They took 3rd at Grand Rapids in a 5-team invitational a couple weeks ago. And so they've only got 1 home meet left over now, and that's in February. I don't remember the day when we get closer, but they've got 1 home dual meet. If you haven't been to a boys swimming and diving meet, you should get out there and do that.
I got a friend of mine on there, Mr. Wilson, and I like to watch and see what kind of wake he puts out.
Yes, he does that. Wolves are at home against Portland tonight. The Wild are at Calgary. And hopefully the Wild are going to get Zucker back. Sounds like he's going to be coming off his injury. They need him, and hopefully things will keep going the right way for the Wild. And the Timberwolves, they keep doing what the Timberwolves have done for years and years, break our hearts.
Why is that? It's just,
I don't know.
It seems like it all goes back to a draft about 25 years ago. And we've been slipping and sliding ever since.
You're right. People forget about the death sentence. They talk about SMU getting the death sentence back in the 80s. The Timberwolves losing first-round picks 4 out of 5 years was the death of this team for a long time. And hopefully Big Cat will get back healthy. I think he's missed 12 games in a row, 11 or 12 games in a row with the sprained knee. I think right now they are saying, okay, we're playing okay without him. Let's get him fully healthy and let's make a move down the stretch and see what happens. We've invested hundreds of millions of dollars in this lad, and let's make sure that he's healthy enough to go do that. So that's all I got.
A lot of sports, but I tell you what, we got football covering between now and then. This is great football. The only thing I'm disappointed in is we're getting close to the end, but the games are going to be fantastic.
Wow, but it's not the end. The XFL starts the week after.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Did you see some of the fancy rules that the XFL is coming out with?
No, lay one on me.
Well, there'll be no kicked extra points. So you can either go from the 2-yard line for a single extra point, the 3-yard line for 2 points, or you can go back to the 10-yard line for 3 points. No kicked extra points. Okay? They are trying. I thought they might go with the Canadian rule on the punting. They want people to punt it in play. So anytime that you kick it out of bounds, try to go for like the coffin corner, the old coffin corner, ball comes out to the 35-yard line. Ooh. So they want you to return the ball. So they want you kicking it in play and doing some things. The kickoffs are from the 30-yard line, so the ball should never get into the end zone. So the ball is always going to be returned. They did some other things.
Which one of our illustrious communities are going to get these teams?
Well, they're mostly in the southern half of the United States, but there's a couple in Texas, I think, and one in California. I won't say for sure the cities, but they start the Saturday after the Super Bowl, the 8th and the 9th, that first weekend. And so they're trying to do some things. They're trying to shorten the games up. They want them to be played in 2 hours and 45 minutes. So you know how we've gotten used to that the clock stops when the ball is dropped or goes out of bounds? Nope. Clock keeps running completely except for the final 2 minutes of each half. half times are only 10 minutes. So they polled fans and said, what do you want to see? How do you want things to be done? And so they are trying to do some of these things, and we'll see. There's some ways of calling penalties that aren't going to be called, and penalties that are going to be called. They're trying some different things to try to speed up the game, make it more. One of the complaints for football is that it's too slow, that there's too much time in between plays. So you're going to see some things. I'm interested to see. I'm not saying I'm going to watch it a lot, but I'm going to be interested to see. And they try to keep the gimmicks out of it, and that was one of the words that they used. No gimmicks. That they wanted to keep it whatever, but they want to take the kicking kind of out of the game and
take the foot out of the ball.
Yeah, it's interesting thoughts.
Let's just call a ball now.
What are you going to listen to? What's on the phonograph right now?
I tell you,
we got to end. We haven't talked about that for a couple weeks.
No, as it turns out, I've been listening to some of my Elton John in preparation for June. You forget how many really good tunes that guy tossed out.
Yeah.
And just common, ordinary type jazz and blues. Eric Schenkman, the guy that I've been listening to, Who Shot Joe? It's a pretty good song. The music's been cranking, but I'll tell you, after the Gophers won, the Rouser come pouring out of my room. I've got a big vinyl copy of the Rouser, and my grandson says, what's that football music you play? Well, it's not really football music. And the other thing is that I spent all weekend shuffling back and forth to Bemidji in an arena watching grandsons play hockey. It's pretty cool.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Speaking of music, if I might, Motley Crue, Def Leppard, Poison, and Joan Jett and the Blackhearts are all going on tour together.
Yeah.
So they added a date at US Bank Stadium on June 27th. The pre-sale tickets were today. I was not going to go watch because we're already going to watch Journey in June, and I'm like, I don't need to make 2 trips to the cities anyway. So I went to look for tickets. Cheapest ticket I could find, $150 was the cheapest, and those were very few left. But I could have got onto the floor right to this side of the stage for $875 per ticket.
You gotta make the investment.
$875. Woo! I mean, I like the '80s music, I do, but
no, but I'm sure Journey's going to put on a heck of a show.
Journey's going to put on a heck of a show.
But these guys, I saw Joan Jett over at the casino a few years back, and she was pretty fantastic.
Not too bad for somebody who's 35, 40 years out of the prime or whatever. So
yeah, she still looks pretty good.
So.
She can scream real well.
Go Vikes!
Go Vikes!
We'll see you guys next time. Thanks.
Thank you.
This program brought to you by Brewski's Bar and Grill, located in Utica, Minnesota. Your one-stop shop for delicious burgers, fries, pizzas, and more.